So what I'd like to do today is just set the stage for our panel on environmental regulation and look at environmental review from the perspective of how can we make it work better. And, you know, we like to think, we've been at this a while, we like to think as we do things longer, we get better at it. But there's a real question in my mind whether we're actually evolving or devolving as we continue environmental review under our current structure. So what I'll be doing is setting the stage for the panel. Whoops. Talking a little bit about how we got to where we are in environmental review, what barriers there are, and some ideas about some more effective approaches. But before I do that, I have to make a true confession to you all. My name is Diana Mendes, and I am a NEPA nerd. I am actually a true believer in NEPA. It's a brilliant piece of legislation. What we've done with it might not be what was intended to be done with it. And there's certainly lessons learned where we can make changes. But I am such a NEPA nerd that when I was invited to the 25th anniversary celebration of the National Environmental Policy Act, I mean, I was there. I was living right. I got there early because I didn't want to miss anything the night before. And I went to the restaurant in the hotel to have dinner, and then I saw him sitting in the restaurant, Linton Caldwell. You guys are like my mother. When I called up my mother and I said, Mom, you'll never guess what happened tonight. I met Linton Caldwell. And there was dead silence on the phone. And she said, Who is that? Is that one of your rock musicians? Mom, he was the architect of the National Environmental Policy Act. There was more dead silence on the phone, and she said, oh, honey, you have to get a life. But NEPA has been my life, and that night was very fateful because I had, here's another indication that I'm a NEPA nerd, I had my copy of NEPA with me when I went into the restaurant. And I approached Mr. Caldwell's table, and I said, please, sir, could you autograph my copy of NEPA? So he looks up at me, very kind person that he was, and he autographs the copy of NEPA, and then he says, would you like to sit down and join me for dinner? Oh my God. You know, nothing better could have happened. So he asked me if I would like to see his keynote address that he was giving the next day. And imagine my surprise when his first slide looked like this. Here I was with my hero, and his first slide was a tombstone for NEPA. And he proceeded to tell me how he felt like his life's work was a failure. Because while NEPA had great intention, a simple concept, right? Think about what you're doing to the environment before it happens. It had turned into a monster of proportions that delayed many needed improvements. And his recommendations were that we ought to think about how we retire NEPA in its current form and move into something else. And that's the spirit in which I will give you my remarks. So in the beginning, it was very simple, right? The law basically asks you to look at and balance what the consequences are on the human and natural environment before taking some sort of federal action. What was great about the law was it provided a lot of flexibility. That flexibility was captured in the Council on Environmental Quality regulations, which enabled every single federal agency to tailor NEPA to its needs, which is great, right? But in that flexibility also comes a lot of complexity, because that means that all the different agencies and all the different departments within those agencies all implement NEPA differently, tailored to their needs. Those needs are probably not the needs of project sponsors. And it's the responsibility of project sponsors to figure out how what they want to do can meet all these different needs of all these different agencies in implementing NEPA. Now, this was just supposed to be a quick disclosure and reflection to make informed decisions, but it's evolved much beyond that. So just so we're all on the same page and understanding the basics, you're supposed to consider consequences and the trade-offs, look at alternative ways of achieving the purposes that you're trying to achieve, discuss those findings with those people who might be affected, and then document those decisions and outcomes. It's a very simple, reasonable concept. It was never intended to be 7,000 pages of encyclopedic information. It was supposed to be a tool that aided federal agencies in thinking through diverse consequences. The way that most agencies implement NEPA even has a fair degree of flexibility. There's something called class of action that lets you meter the amount of NEPA review that's required based on the significance of impacts. Most of us are familiar with the environmental impact statement because those are for the larger projects. Those are the ones you hear about. But there are two other tools, categorical exclusions, which are very streamlined administrative processes that if projects meet certain criteria and don't have significant impacts, they can proceed rather rapidly. And environmental assessments, that's a case for when you're not really sure, have a quick look-see, one of two outcomes, either no significant impact or you might find that you have to do an EIS. So there's flexibility built in to how we can administer this program. The problem is that we don't take full advantage of that flexibility because we're worried about all the things that can possibly go wrong. The other thing that is affecting us is that the great thing about NEPA is it brings everybody to the table. A lot of people know what their roles and responsibilities are. But it's not just NEPA alone that's causing the delays. Subsequent to the adoption of NEPA, there are a myriad of environmental laws, Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, we can list them all off, executive orders, state and local regulations, all of which come into play during the environmental review process, all of which are fragmented and single purpose in their focus. And again, who's supposed to reconcile that? The person who's trying to advance the infrastructure improvements. So even if NEPA didn't exist, I'm going to say something that's a little controversial. In a funny way, NEPA is a streamlining tool because it does give us an umbrella under which environmental review can occur. And if you had to tick off each one of the 130 some odd requirements that typically come into play in a major infrastructure project, and you didn't have a NEPA forum in which to do it, it would take even longer than NEPA does, which is a scary thought. But with each agency implementing NEPA differently, you know, no wonder we've lost our way. We can't see a clear picture anymore. Each agency trying to satisfy its requirements under NEPA, make a finding so that they don't get sued, so that they're discharging their federal responsibility. But at the end of the day, no one's looking at the whole project. So we wind up with processes that are out of focus and out of control, that take too long and cost too much. I think that everybody can agree on that, whether you're on the environmental side or the project delivery side. And you have to raise the question, are we really making better projects? Because inherent in this process is a consideration of alternatives. And what we wind up doing during NEPA review is everybody puts their ideas on the table and then we throw rocks at them, right? So that this one isn't good because of that reason, this one takes wetlands, this one takes historic resources, this one doesn't have the economic development return. So what is our preferred alternative and our action that we're going to implement at the end of the NEPA process? The sorry answer that staggers across the finish line. It's not the project anybody wanted. It's the project that was able to survive endless rounds of criticism. Now, why would we make investments that way. So fear of litigation, overblown documentation, those are probably two of the largest culprits of project delays. And I say fear of litigation as opposed to actual threat of litigation, because in most times the litigation that's driving these overwrought environmental review process never even appears. Yet we all try to write the perfect EIS, the perfect environmental review process that is bulletproof. There is no such animal, and there never will be, and it doesn't matter whether we write 30,000 pages. If somebody's going to sue you, they're going to sue you. The best you can do is be prepared, but doing more over and over and over again doesn't get you out of a legal situation. It positions you to defend yourself well, perhaps, but we put too much emphasis on that fear of litigation. And so there are a number of challenges that come up in terms of lack of consensus, changes in the project, because again, we're evaluating alternatives, knocking them all down, instead of all working collectively to what is the action we want to have happen and how can we make that project the best that it could possibly be. So I've given you all the words, but this is a picture worth 1,000 words. This is what we do in environmental review, right? So let's change it. I mean, think about when NEPA was written, we didn't have the powerful computing capabilities that we have. The databases of known resources weren't as sophisticated as they are today. Electronic and social media, I'm sure someone was thinking about it somewhere, but it certainly wasn't common. So we're stuck in a process that was developed based on the tools that were available at the time, but that don't really take advantage of the opportunities that we have today to quickly take a look, see what the possible consequences are, discuss it with a lot of people, and most importantly, make a decision and move on. So we need a more investment-driven approach. NEPA's founded on the rational model. You define the problem, you look at alternatives, you think of different solutions, you provide mitigation. You know, it's a wonderful model, right? When I was in graduate school and in planning theory class, and I thought, why would anybody do anything else? You know, it's perfect. Well, the reason we need to do something else is, at best, we live in a world of disjointed incrementalism, at best. And this stepwise process that we do during environmental review doesn't fit with the pace at which we need to make decisions today. So a more scenario planning-based approach, one that gets to an answer and figuring out how to make that project meet a myriad of goals, is going to serve us much better than our current stepwise process. Now, MAP 21, moving ahead for progress in the 21st century, takes a lot of steps in the right direction. It reinforces the authority of lead agencies. And for those of you who aren't in the transportation field, this is the current transportation bill. It introduces a provision that provides for potential penalties to agencies that don't complete their reviews within project schedules. It allows and encourages the use of prior planning studies as part of the NEPA process. That can save a lot of time and money. It increases the breadth of categorical exclusions and enables projects that have good planning to advance more quickly. Just to give you a frame of reference, a categorical exclusion in the transportation world, typically a 3 to maybe 4 month process. Environmental impact statement, closer to a 4 to 5 year process. So, you know, using categorical exclusions is of enormous benefit. MAP 21 also provides for consolidation of a lot of different types of documentation, draft and final EISs and records of decision. There used to be in the regulation mandatory waiting periods between when the FEIS would end and when you were allowed to do a record of decision. Also, MAP 21 changes the limitations on claims, how long you can get sued, down from 180 days, which was introduced in Safety Lieu, and gets that down to 150 days, because before it used to be 7 or some odd years that somebody could sue you. And then it also provides clarity on the federal role and some enhanced technical assistance. So a lot of steps in the right direction under the current framework, but certainly there are opportunities to do more, which we're going to talk about in the panel. So this is the challenge that I leave you with. When there's a will, there's a way, right? And in adversity, there can be some opportunity. Our environmental review process is broken. It's a good thing. We should consider environmental factors. Please don't misinterpret what I'm saying. When I landed in Beijing, the first thing I did was email my environmental team and say, wow, what we do really does matter, because I can see the air here and I don't think that's a good thing. So, you know, there's a lot of good that comes out of our environmental review process, but it can be better, and that's what this forum is about. So let's get there. Thanks.